after today, I mean, I'm feeling good.
Yeah, of course, we're here. Of course, the Chiefs kick off on the road today against the New Orleans Saints down in New Orleans, Louisiana. Steve, this is your Super Bowl pick of these two teams facing off in February in Tampa Bay. Give me your initial outlook as we come into today's game, which kicks off in just a little over 2 hours.
Well, when you look at it, this is the Chiefs have been undefeated on the road so far this season, and
They're the only team that's undefeated.
exactly. And coming into today's game, of course, the Chiefs had to prepare for Taysom Hill up until when the Saints announced that Drew Brees will be back, and so. I think when you look at it, and the Chiefs going down to the Big Easy, it's gonna be a dogfight. I mean, you have Drew Brees coming back, but like I always say, is a guy is always ready to come back at least a week before he comes back.
Well, of course, the Chiefs coming to today's game with a 12-1 record. The New Orleans Saints, they're coming off of last week's loss against the Philadelphia Eagles. I think they lost 24-21 to the Eagles. Drew Brees is the starting quarterback in today's game. They come in with a 10-3 record. Of course, they need the game more so than the Chiefs do because obviously Green Bay winning on yesterday kind of separates them a little bit more.
Right.
They lost the head-to-head matchup against Green Bay, so they need to win out and hope that Green Bay can falter at least one game so they can try to overtake them for the number one seed. But right now, Chiefs are number one in the AFC, the Saints are number two in the NFC right now with an outside shot of the number one seed.
Yeah, and this isn't a game where both teams, well, Chiefs at least, have a commanding lead in the AFC. I mean,
commanding relative.
Yeah. Well, they have a lead in the AFC, but the AFC West they have a commanding lead.
Yeah.
So even if they lose today, it's still not a pressing issue because the Chiefs needed the Steelers to lose to Buffalo, so they still have that edge over the Buffalo Bills if there ends up being a tie as far as record goes.
And what you want to do for Kansas City, for me, you just want to win out. I mean, as long as you win out, then we're not even having really this serious discussion on today's matter. But coming into today's game, again, the Chiefs are coming off of a win last week against the Miami Dolphins, 33-27. That game was not really it was a bad game for a normal quarterback, but Patrick Mahomes is not that normal quarterback. He had 393 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, but 3 interceptions against that defense of Brian Flores and the Miami Dolphins. This week, they will be traveling again, taking on a team that is ranked number 2 overall in defense and yards allowed. How would the Chiefs' offense look fair against your guy Cam Jordan and this defense?
Man, just keep playing. I mean, the thing about it this year is they started off having a balanced offense. And then with the addition of Le'Veon Bell, and I'm not saying the addition was a bad thing. However, it just seems like the run game has tapered off just a little bit. They haven't seriously. We've been talking about it week after week, and the reason that Andy Reid, comes with those gadget sort of plays is because the running game hasn't been there, and people will say, all right, well, he hasn't really committed to the run game. Well, he has. Le'Veon Bell and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, they both get their touches, and even though they can't, and you get upset all the time, it's like you have to be able to punch the ball in when you're 1 yard out, in your own red zone. However, the passing game has worked for them, even with Sammy Watkins out. They've had other guys to be able to step up. So I say that to say this. They need to have more of a balance going into the playoffs and into hopefully the Super Bowl.
Well, last week, just to be fair, they rushed for almost 100 yards last week against Miami Dolphins. Granted, you can only, as Patrick says, that they only take what the defense is giving them. And because of the control that Andy allows Patrick to have at the line, they run, obviously, a boatload of RPO if their whole offense isn't just RPO. And allows Patrick to make that decision at the line. And because he sees what the defense gives them, if they put 5 or 6 in the box, then they'll run the ball. If they stuff the box, he'll look to pass. And so that's one of the maturity of Patrick Mahomes that we see coming into the season and throughout the season. But again, when you say that they've gotten their fair touches, well, I know Le'Veon, which is something I touched on earlier this week with Andy Reid. I think he only had 4 touches in last week's game. He had two carries for 21 yards, two catches, and he really was not a factor. So, my concern as it relates to Le'Veon and the running game is, well, does he not know the offense well enough, or is is something going on to where he's not getting what you would look at as the requisite amount of touches for someone of his caliber? Because he hasn't tapered off, or he hasn't fallen off, in my opinion, from what I've seen, like a Shady McCoy was last year when he joined the team.
And you can look at it as this. You can look at it as, okay, well, the Chiefs offensive line, they haven't gotten the push that they need. I mean, they've been, even though they're battle tested, however, they just haven't gotten that push. I mean, Eric Fisher's just coming back. You lost Kelechi Simile on the first game of the season. And you just don't have that push you talk about Le'Veon Bell. Well, when Le'Veon was with Pittsburgh, their offensive line was outstanding. He was able to create, they were able to get pushed, and he ran with patience. In Kansas City, by the time he's trying to do that stutter step, the line is collapsing and the defense is already there. So you can look at it as the offensive line portion as well, and maybe the reason Patrick doesn't allow the RPO and handing the ball off.
The only pushback I would say that Le'Veon, when he runs, his yards always seem to be positive. Mm-hmm. So I'd give a little pushback as it relates to Le'Veon in this offensive line, because even when he gets hit, he's still getting positive yards on his carries.
Yeah, and then you look at today, Eric Fisher, he was able to have a full practice. He'll be back. Hopefully, he'll be able to come back today. He's set to come back. And then you have Yasir Durant. It will be stepping up without, because Mike Rimmers is going down as well.
Yeah, he was downgraded to Al, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this offensive line I think that will come into play, because you have two good defensive linemen on that Saints team.
And speaking of that, I mean, we can just get right down to the nuts and bolts. The Chiefs, they lead the all-time series against the Saints 6-5. Mm-hmm. They've won the last two matches that they've had against the Saints, even though they've been 4 and 8 years apart, respectively. Last time these two teams played was at Arrowhead. The Chiefs knocked them off 27-21. Drew Brees was the quarterback at that time. And even in 2012, the Chiefs beat the Saints 27-24 in overtime. When you look at this matchup, Chiefs are the number one offense in the NFL. So they come in after about 429 yards a game. Mm-hmm. Look, I'm a strong proponent of, as well as you are, as Patrick, going after and winning the MVP. Now, we saw, I want to jump to this just for last night, but we saw what Aaron Rodgers did. I'm of the mindset that these teams and Coach Reed and Patrick, they saw what Aaron Rodgers did last night. To me, there was a little opening there for Patrick to have a big game today. For Andy Reid to kind of try to call up a big game today, right, for Patrick statistically to have, saying to try to put his. Now it's those two together that are the front runners for the MVP. But Aaron did not. I mean, he had one touchdown in the air, one on the ground. But it wasn't one of those type of games where you could kind of like stamp his claim to the MVP. I think if Patrick has a big game today, drawn up to Andy Reid, then I think it's going to help his cause. I say that to say that we look at it. Patrick is thrown for over 4,200 yards. He leads the league with that. He's third in the league with 33 touchdowns, 5 interceptions after his 3 interception day on last week. When you look at this matchup, Patrick Mahomes, Drew Brees, what are you seeing? Because I did tell you that Drew Brees is probably going to come back and play in today's game.
Yeah, and I didn't quite understand that. I mean, you always question. Well, not question, but you question the reason why I said what I'm getting ready to say. Yeah. And what we talked about earlier this week was the fact that, look, Drew Brees is 41 years old. He suffered 11 fractured ribs and 1 punctured lung. Now you look at Teddy Bridgewater over in the Chargers.
Not Bridgewater. That's Carolina. Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah, Tyrod Taylor. I don't know why I think about Teddy Bridgewater. Yeah. But you look at Tyrod Taylor, and he suffered, a punctured lung, no fractured ribs, and it took him 5 weeks before he was even eligible to come back and play. He still hasn't seen the field this year. Yeah. So there's a 10-year age difference in between those two guys. Yeah, and as much as these New Orleans Saints, they look to try to battle and go up against this dynamic Chiefs offense, it kind of makes you scratch your head, because they went 3-1 without Drew Brees. So it just makes me question why they're trying to bring him back today. And I know Drew Brees, that when you look at their passing numbers with Drew Brees in the game, that they fare a lot better. But it's mind-boggling, man.
Well, my thought process, and I know we talked about on Monday and I talked about throughout the week, is that if you're the New Orleans Saints, last week's loss is what kind of rushed things back, because last week you were the top seed until you lost to the Philadelphia Eagles, and because you lost the head-to-head battle with the Green Bay Packers in Week 3, now you're essentially a game and a half behind them, and so you have to, you're in playoff mode. You qualify for the playoff, but to try to get the number one seed, you've got to. You feel like that Drew Brees is the best player at that position. It gives you the best chance to knock off Kansas City. The only way that happens is if he's in there, because if you lose this game, you're still ahead of the Tampa Bay, but now you're on a 2-game losing streak, and so if Tampa were to win today, that they may feel like they have an outside shot to overtake you in the division and possibly get a number 2, number 3 seed out of that. So I understand why they did it. I don't agree with it, but I do understand why they would rush him back.
And you can look at it from a mind standpoint of, okay, maybe Sean Payton, because you asked me, he's like, well, if they wanted to screw the Chiefs, well, why didn't they just hold him out and announce today, this morning, right before game time, that he was going to play? Well, it could work in reverse. They could just be saying, all right, well, Drew Brees is going to play. Now you have to take time away from planning for Taysom Hill to also prepare for Drew Brees. So that could be it as well.
I'm with you. If I was Sean Payton, I wouldn't have announced him starting until right before game time, like they did with the Chargers and Justin Herbert, because the Chiefs had to throw their whole game plan pretty much out of the window. So, look, to play that type of mind game, that's what I would have done if I knew that at the end of the day I was going to have him start.
And it just kind of plays into the Chiefs' favor both ways when you look at it, because Taysom Hill, even though he was 72%, with the completion rating right now, when he was the starting quarterback for the Saints, Drew Brees he doesn't really pass the ball far down the field. Everything was within 10 to 15 yards so far this season. Yeah. Now we're not talking about today. Even though they're not going to have Michael Thomas, they still have Emmanuel Sanders, and they still have Alvin Kamara, who is has rushed for 600 yards and 10 touchdowns, and also it has a great receiving numbers. So now you're like, okay, we don't have to plan for Michael Thomas, but we have to plan for just those other 3 guys.
Well, the thing about the Saints, they still have offensive weapons, because Michael Thomas has been in and out of the lineup most of the season anyway. Yeah. So that's to me, that's a wash. But with Drew Brees coming back, now you'll see Taysom Hill in more positions and in more plays than he would if he was a starting quarterback. He can return kicks. He can line up in the backfield. He can line up outside of the wide receiver. So so for Drew Brees, you got an added weapon with him, and so obviously the Chiefs, they may not have been able to prepare for that, because what are you going to do? Drew Brees under center. Yeah, granted, you don't have Michael Thomas there, but you still got Emmanuel Sanders. You got Jared Cook. You got he still has a plethora of weapons, and Sean Payton is not going to put him in a position, Drew Brees in a position where he can just re-injure everything and get hurt, because that goes against everything that they're trying to do right now.
Which is the reason I said, why bring him back? If you have that concern, you should not be bringing him back.
I agree, but one of the other things that we talked about is that if you Drew Brees, you've never faced Patrick Mahomes, and so there's no guarantee that your team is going to make it to the Super Bowl after what we've seen the last 3 years in the playoffs.
Oh, they making it to the Super Bowl, man. That's my that's my pick. So
I get you. But if you Drew Brees, this may be the only time that you get a chance to face Patrick Mahomes, especially if you're not coming back next year. So for him being a competitor, for his legacy, he may feel like in his mind he has to get out there on the field. And so, look, I don't know. Maybe he'll get shot up with enough stuff.
He's gonna have to.
Where he can withstand the pain. But again,
41 years old, man, and you go out there. It's been 4.5 weeks.
Yeah.
So I just don't see it. I just don't see him coming out there. You have 11 fractured ribs. He's going to be out there with that flap jacket on, and he's just going to be. He's not going to be as mobile. Let's just say the line collapses and Chris Jones and Frank Clark, they get pushed up the middle.
First of all,
I'm just saying.
Well, just because they came out of witness protection last week doesn't mean that they didn't go back in. So they have to prove that, because you're assuming that the New Orleans Saints line is as decimated as the Chiefs' offensive line.
I mean, look. I'm going after the eye test. What I see. And what I saw last week is
That was last week. But I'm talking about what I've seen over the
defense
season.
that has. I mean, you can't sit up here and say that Miami's offensive line is terrible because they're not. I mean, that's a playoff team. Miami is a good team, and look, they had some confidence coming into this game from last week, and I think they're going to build on that.
The only difference I would say is that we know what Cam Jordan and that defensive line can do against a team that has a decimated line right now in the Kansas City Chiefs. Their defense can put the offense in a situation where we're not going to like it. And if by chance that Drew Brees, because look, I don't expect Drew Brees to come out firing all cylinders, but he might do that to surprise us. But I see a lot of handoffs to Alvin Kamara and to their other running back to try to get pushed and to challenge the Chiefs defensive line and try to, because you got to remember the Chiefs defense, they have problems stopping the run. So if I'm Sean Payton, the best way to protect Drew Brees is to utilize your run game.
Yeah, and I look at this game and what the Saints are going to try to do with Alvin Kamara. They're going to try to do, and go back to Week 9 when the Chiefs played the Panthers with Christian McCaffrey. He was, I think, 10 for 10 for 80 yards before he went down, and he was catching a lot of passes out of the backfield. And that's where the Chiefs have trouble, is a running back who's able to catch in space and make a move and go. And I think that's what we're going to see from Alvin Kamara this weekend, which is nothing different from what they've already done thus far this season.
Also, looking at this game today, look, we talked a little bit about Alvin Kamara, but how important is he to not only the pass game, but the run game, whether it's Taysom Hill or Drew Brees in the backfield?
Very important. I mean, he is their offense. I mean, he's their leading receiver. He's their leading numbers-wise as running back. So he's a player. The Chiefs fans may remember Jamal Charles. I think he's Jamal Charles on steroids. I really do. Even though he's not as fast as Jamal, but he can still do just as much. And he creates a huge matchup for the defense, because I mean, who can you put on him? You really can't. It's like Tyreek Hill. I mean, you really can't put a guy that is, okay, we're going to have a spy on Alvin Kamara wherever he goes, and maybe Tyrann Mathieu is that guy. But then when you put Taysom Hill out there, it kind of makes you think, okay, well, all right, we have to make sure that we have a hard-nosed guy to go up against another guy that's going to play very hard. Maybe that's Daniel Sorensen. But then if you're taking Daniel Sorensen and you're making him be that spy on Taysom Hill, and you have Tyrann Mathieu that's looking at Alvin Kamara the whole time, unless Alvin Kamara decides to block the blitz. Who else are you going to leave? Emmanuel Sanders? You're going to leave Bashar Breeland out there on the island, which I believe he'll probably guard Emmanuel Sanders. So there's going to be some kind of matchup issues, and I think Steve Spagnuolo is going to have his work cut out for him today.
Patrick Mahomes, this is his first year facing the NFC South. He's He's got 7 touchdowns, 0 interceptions in his 2 games thus far. Obviously, we look at stats like that. We're hoping for another big game today against the NFC South. But 2 of his weapons that he's been able to utilize, especially during this nice little stretch right now, has been Travis Kelce at the tight end position and Tyreek Hill at the wideout. Right now, Travis I believe he still leads the league in receiving with 1,250 yards, first tight end thus far to do this. Obviously, we're looking. Travis wants to try to lead the league in receiving over the next 3 ball games. But that being the case, we see how important Kelce as well as Hill are to Patrick Mahomes. Last week, even against the single coverage, I mean, look, man, the Miami Dolphins, the defense was outstanding. But we cannot overlook at what they have with the Saints on that defense side of the ball. Again, their defense ranked number 2 overall, so that means that Jack Rabbit, Janoris Jenkins over there, Marshawn Lattimore, is going to be a beast. And they're looking to go single coverage now against you. And then you got Malcolm Jenkins over the top. I mean, what can we expect? Yeah, and look, I don't know if I have to go by Gates or Treacy's and make sure I got a nice meal to sit down and watch this and try to analyze this before post game tonight. But what are you looking forward to in these battles this afternoon between the Chiefs wideouts and tight end and the defense and the defensive backfield with the New Orleans Saints.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head. There's going to be some matchups that you're going to have to watch, and I think Malcolm Jenkins is going to be probably the main one. I mean, he's the leader, not only besides Cam Jordan, but he's one of the leaders on that defense. And then when you look at it, I mean, you have Travis Kelce, who's a matchup issue. I mean, he's too fast for a linebacker, and he's too strong for a safety or a cornerback to guard him. So he's going to get his. But then you look at Tyreek Hill. Most teams, and of course cornerbacks, competitive, right? They're going to say, all right, well, if I'm matched up with Tyreek Hill, I don't need any help. Don't help me over the top. I'm going to match up mano a mano. He's not going to beat me. And then what happens? Tyreek Hill runs a vertical and beats him by yards and does a flip in the end zone with the peace sign. So, I mean, they're going to have to double team one of those guys. Depends on which one. I don't know. But here's the thing about it. They have to, and what we talked about earlier in the show, they're going to have to develop that run game. Look, we talked about the Cleveland Browns and with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Eric Bieniemy said that Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Le'Veon Bell are like thunder and lightning. So why can't they emulate, even though they're different offenses, and of course Cleveland Browns quarterback, he's nowhere near like Patrick Mahomes, as far as ability throwing the ball down the field. So man, they have to have a balanced offense, have a balanced running attack compared to passing. And I think inside the dome today, we may see it. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going back to where he won the national title. He talked about winning his high school, state title inside that same dome. So we'll see. I think Clyde may have a day today.
Well, first of all,
I'm just saying.
Clyde at LSU and Clyde in high school didn't face this type of thing.
Oh, of course. But there's just something different when you going inside a place that you're familiar with and that you've had success at. You just feel different. You get the ball, that one guy that you wouldn't make miss in prior weeks. Maybe you make that guy miss today. And I just think, he's going to go down there and have a day.
So I'm curious, if I remember correctly, I think this is the first game that the Chiefs this year are playing in a dome. I can't.
L.A. You have Raiders.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so
you also have L.A. as well.
Yeah, L.A. So looking at that, and I mentioned that thinking about the surface track because last week they were in Miami. It was hot. They had today's climate control. People talk about this being a track meet. Now, for me, this is going to be the time. Now, obviously, I got money on some of this stuff, but this is going to be the time where I'm looking for an up and down field, a track race, so to speak, between both of these offenses. Now, whether or not Drew Brees is able to really chunk it out there a lot, I'm not sure. But I do think that Alvin Kamara can get out in the open field and make defensive players miss for the Chiefs and maybe break one loose. I'm curious is how much do you think that playing this particular team, this style of offense that Andy Reid, Sean Payton, they're gonna they've been in their war rooms designing plays or whatever. How much do you think play calling is going to factor into today's game?
I think it's going to factor a lot. Andy Reid is a mastermind. Sean Payton is one of those guys that looks at Andy Reid and is like, man, you're definitely going to be a Hall of Fame coach, and I'm going up against him. Now, they do have the weapons to be able to, because we talk about the young quarterbacks trying to get into a shootout with Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
Now, Taysom Hill was going to be the starter. I would say, all right, now there's going to be some kind of matchup. But you have Drew Brees, who is going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback. So I think there will be that reason, and that's the reason why I have this as being a high-scoring game, even though Drew Brees is injured. So we don't know how severe it is to this day. But, I think it's going to be a shootout, and both of these coaches will have some stuff drawn up that, and I'm still calling it my two Super Bowl matchup. So will the Chiefs show everything to them? No. I think in the back of Andy Reid's mind is like, if we do have to match up against this team in the Super Bowl, do I show him everything today? There's still a thought that you have to think about, when you look at that.
I'm gonna be honest, and I said to someone earlier this week that I don't think that they have an issue with opening up the playbook because you got to remember, we didn't see that. Well, I guess the Wasp play was done throughout the year. They just did it. Was just wasn't highlighted till the Super Bowl. But like the Rose Bowl stuff, I think Andy Reid and them don't have a problem opening up the book if that's what it takes to win the ball game.
Yeah.
Because they can still, look, look again. They allow the players to come up with stuff and that they will put into the ball game. So I disagree in the fact that they'll try to keep some things because they'll still want to try to win the game, and if that means open up, diving deeper into the playbook, that's what they'll do. And doesn't matter if it's the Jets or if it's the New Orleans Saints. The Chiefs
much different versus the Jets. Much different.
I agree to an extent. I agree because against the Jets you can work on some things against them, but against the Saints, no, I can see them going deep into the playbook. Especially if it's a close game, you can see them doing it because they'll want to one up them or get something that'll get them to get the play and get the team going. And so I see that happening today. I do see them open up the playbook. I do see it being a high scoring game. I'm not going to give our predictions just yet, but I do see a track meet, so to speak. And look, going back to Tyreek Hill, I'd love to see a scenario where where they're really trying to challenge him because they can say that they want to go 1-on-1, but if it really ends up like that, they might be in a situation where, again, you look at Tampa Bay, they lined up against them in the first quarter, single coverage without having them any help, and he burned up for 200+ yards and 2 touchdowns.
And that's demoralizing when you have a guy that you look at and it's like, all right, we're gonna match you up out here. This is your assignment. We want you to just limit his catches. Try to limit what he's able to do.
Stop him, but
just limit. No, you're not going to stop him, but just limit what he's able to do. It's going to be tough. And if he gets his first touchdown, teams go back to just like you got to go back to the drawing board. It's like, all right, well, what we've just planned, we're throwing it out the window because it's not going to work. But even still, with that being said, you look at Miami Dolphins last week. They took away Tyreek Hill early. But what did Andy Reid do? He was able to still get Tyreek Hill the ball and give your playmakers a way to make plays. That's what you do. And what Tyreek Hill do? He took a little handoff and took it up the sideline. So, I mean, you want this Chiefs offense to be successful. And what they have done, and you look at, all right, well, they can stretch the field, they can do all what we know that they can do, but can you run the ball? And I'm still going back to that. You have to stress it because if you're balanced, that just opens up everything else. If the team, and it's what we talked about earlier with Damian Williams, we didn't know what Clyde was going to bring to the table, and we're like, well, no Damian Williams, you're not going to go back and try to get Kareem Hunt. We both said we thought the Chiefs should have done that, but they went and got Clyde. And I'm not saying Clyde's a bad option. I'm not saying Le'Veon's a bad option, but teams were able to play the pass. And if you're going to sit back and play the pass, then they're going to say, all right, we're going to let Clyde beat us. Well, now, I mean, you have Le'Veon back there, so they have to respect you to a certain extent. But it's like, all right, their main focus is the pass, and that's where we're going to play.
I'm curious, and I've been wanting to ask this for some time, and we don't really talk about it much on our Monday show. But are you surprised that teams have not kind of gone back the way that they were defending the Chiefs earlier in the season, kind of like the Raiders and some of them, where they were giving them the run and pretty much trying to drop 8 players back and defend against the Chiefs, and
that's what I'm saying.
And now it seems like it seems like they stopped before the run, even though the Chiefs aren't running as much, and so I don't know. I wish I had all the answers because.
Well, the answer to that is Clyde went for what 138 that first game that. Who was the first game of the season? Houston tried to do that, and what happened? He went for 138. Chiefs still won. So then teams was like, all right, well, now we still got to make sure that we worry about them. And then the Chiefs go out and get Le'Veon, and it's like, all right, man.
Yeah, that was like week 6, week 7. But again, I asked the question because it's like, Patrick early on wasn't having, like 300-400 yard games. I think he might have had one before. I know he had one before the Tampa Bay game, but it just seemed like his stats weren't as though he was the one beating. He was still getting touchdowns, but he was like against Buffalo. He throw for 200 yards, but only and had 3 touchdowns. Where it was like, but they were able to really pretty much cut him off from having those big plays and stuff. Now it's just like, I don't know. It just seems like, well, we know they're not going to stick with the run, but we're going to force them, but sure, we'll give up the big plays. It is. They give up the big plays, but they're trying to keep them within, as I said before, the best way to defend the Chiefs. Give up the big plays, just stop them in the red zone. Don't let them get a touchdown out of it. Because if you get the Chiefs in the red zone right now, they're having a hard time scoring. I think it was even announced on television last week that they're like at the bottom of the league.
Yeah, right above the Bears. Oh, right above the Bears. That's the stat. I mean, we looked at, and you harp on this all the time. It's like, all right, why do you need to do some special play in the red zones? Because you can't run the ball. That's what it amounts to, man. You can't just pound the ball in there. And I mean, Eric Bieniemy, he answered that question. It's like, all right, you have Clyde, you have Le'Veon. Why don't you able to just pound it in? You're on the 1 yard line. Why are you doing these gadget plays? Travis Kelce, trying to be a quarterback. And that's just it. You have to be able to run the ball when teams know that you're going to run the ball. And that's what Eric Bieniemy's response was.
Right, but it's
not happening. It's not happening. But and you look at and that is, I think, it's attributed to that offensive line. You not getting that if you can't.
So what are you doing throughout the week then? What are you working on throughout the week then? If you know that's a fall and you come in after each game and you come in on Wednesdays or Mondays when Andy reads me, you talk about stuff you got to work on. What are you working on during the week? If the same thing,
I'm gonna tell you what they work on. More ways to get Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce the ball. That's what they work on. What do you mean? If you know your offensive line is trash, what are you talking about? It's like, all right, I know my offensive line is trash, so what am I gonna do? I'm gonna go and think up more creative ways. I'm gonna get Travis Kelce the ball, try to let him throw the ball to Patrick. I'm going to run a motion play so Patrick is able to get the ball on the run and then get out in space. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to sit up here and work on something that can't be fixed. No, I'm not going to work on that.
I'm sorry. It is the red hour. It's 1:33.
Chiefs cheat sheet.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Because you got me. I'm sorry. It is the Chiefs cheat sheet. Steve Walls, Darren Smith. I'm still tripping off the face. He just called it trash. So look, we're going to take a quick time out. I do mean quick. We'll be back in about 90 seconds. Steve Walls, Darren Smith, Chiefs cheat sheet. We are live from the Courtyard Marriott up here in North Kansas City, and we'll be right back after this timeout. That might kill it.
I think it may be good. Figure it out. See if that works. 1, 2. What up?
We're back on the Chiefs cheat sheet. Steve Walsh, Darren Smith. Steve, I'm sitting there. I know we're getting out of together, but I'm sitting there looking at some of these scores right now in the NFL, and right now I'm kind of shaking my head because I'm thinking about some of those parlays. Ooh, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they are making me look real bad right now. So I might have to jump off that bandwagon and jump on the Packers bandwagon because right now,
no, there's no switching up, man.
I know. I don't do it until
no switching up.
That's your
Super Bowl pick. That's what you got to ride with.
I do got to ride with it. But damn, they're making me look bad right now. Steve, going back to this game, one of the things that hopefully it doesn't come down to will be special teams. Harrison Butker, he's been outstanding the last 4 weeks, since the bye week. Talk about that. Look, he's 40 or 46 point after touchdowns. He's only missed 2 field goals. But, for the Saints, they have a pretty decent kicker as well. No, he's kicking 80% this year from field goals. He's 20-25, but he's been perfect on his point after attempts. This could be a situation where Harrison Butker and Will Lutz will be called upon today.
Yeah, and you think about just how Harrison Butker, he started off the season. I mean, he was kind of questionable, whether, all right, we're going to have to go out there and look for another kicker. And he stepped up. And we always talk about how important preseason is and the fact that for a kicker, he doesn't get any downtime. I mean, preseason is his way to practice. And he just missed those 4 games. And you look at the first 4 games of the season, and that could possibly have been used as preseason for him. So Harrison, he doesn't miss those kicks, and you always like, well, if you can make the long one, then you should be able to make the little 30-yarder, and we call it little 30-yarder, but I think he's going to be able to hit his stride, but you have now, last week, you saw McCole run back a punt. I think Byron Pringle may be able to be back there and get put back in the lineup for kickoff return.
Yeah, so. He is. I think he is activated off the IR today. So, and then speaking of that, I think the defensive back that we signed recently, who played for the New York Giants, I think he is scheduled to move up to the main roster today as well. So, I mean, look, if you're the Chiefs, granted, all the help you can get and all hands on deck. Thinking of, talking about that though, Patrick cannot have another a game like he did last week again today, because this is a different type of team. This is a different type of defense that you're going to be facing, where this offense will make you pay for the mistakes that you make. So Patrick cannot afford to have 3 interceptions. They have 2 players, Janoris Jenkins, Marcus Williams. They both lead their team with 3 interceptions. But defensively, Trey Hendrickson, he could be, and look, we talked a little bit about Cam Jordan, but he could be someone that creates a lot of disruption. And with our offensive line the way it is, he could get after Patrick. So Patrick is going to be on the move a lot today, and it's something that he's going to have to be very, very mindful about, but also have to be very careful about when he has that football.
Yeah, but the thing about it too, I mean, you still have a lot of offensive weapons, for the Chiefs. So the Saints we're sitting here talking about the Saints defense, but believe me, the Saints defense is talking about this Chiefs offense.
Oh yeah,
and how they can stop and limit the big plays, because once this Chiefs team gets confidence on the defenders and whoever they're playing, they're able to run away with it. You saw what the Chiefs were able to do in scoring 30 straight points last week. And so the Chiefs can't come out here and start off slow. If they have a turnover, or we see Patrick Mahomes, they're in the first series doing that little trot back to the Chiefs sideline, I mean, you don't want to have to come back against the New Orleans Saints, because they have a defense that can limit what you want to do.
What can we expect from Frank Clark and Chris Jones today? Now, look, I know Hitchens and a lot of players who aren't of that value, we don't acknowledge them and call them out. But again, you get paid $18-20 million. I'm expecting big games from you each and every week.
You are. The Chiefs, here's what we talked about this, and I hate going back to last year, because last year was a crazy year. But the thing about it is, we said this, when the Chiefs Bob Sutton was out the door and they brought in Steve Spagnuolo, all we asked for was that the defense was in the middle of the road. That's it. Now, this Chiefs defense is ranked, somewhere 20th, 19th, 20th. I mean, they're a couple sacks away from being in that middle of the road category, but now fans are like, well, we expect more. We expect more than this team being in the middle of the road. So if we're expecting more and we wanted them to be a middle of the road defense last year, I mean, what are we wanting from this defense? Are we wanting them to be top 10? Or are we wanting them to be, somewhere 15, 16? Because we've seen with them being a 15, 16, ranked defense that they're able to win when they're supposed to.
Yeah, and of course, biggest thing is takeaways and giveaways. Chiefs were, up there up until last week. They're +8. The Saints are +6. Now, versus coaches against each other, Sean Payton is 1-1 against Andy Reid. Andy Reid is 4-3 against Sean Payton. Generally, home field advantage home field would be something, but they only got about 3,000 fans in the stadium today. So going on the road today for the Chiefs is not like they're going into a hostile environment because there's only 3,000 people allowed.
I think 1,500 of those fans are going to be Tyrann Mathieu and also Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'm telling you.
Yeah, Patrick's gonna have a couple of people there. I think his father and his father's girlfriend are going to be there, but and actually his mama's going to be there as well. So, but I'm curious, when we look at this overall, X factor. What's going to be the X factor for both teams in today's game?
For this Chiefs team not start off slow, and also for the offense to have a balanced attack, to let Clyde get anywhere between, I would say, just being generous, 15 to 20 touches, and that's being very generous, and if he splits those with Le'Veon, then so be it. But I really believe that they need to have a balanced attack, because this Saints and most teams, like you said, they're not going to play the pass, so they're going to play them honest. And if they're playing them honest, then that means Patrick Mahomes is going to sit up here and try to dissect you and figure out, all right, well, if Tyreek's not open, then I'm going to Travis. But they need to have a balanced attack, and if they can do that, then I feel like they'll be fine today. But on the defensive side of the ball, you want them to come out with all of the energy. And I understand that Tyrann Mathieu, he's going back home. He's going to be playing in front of all of his friends and family, so he's going to bring the energy. But can he transfer that energy to the rest of his teammates and have Frank Clark and Chris Jones in there battling with him?
For me, the X factor always starts with the line of scrimmage. To me, it's going to be whether or not the Chiefs' offensive line can hold up against that pass rush of the Saints' defensive line and can keep Patrick upright as much as possible, if at all possible, in today's game. I think when you talk about running the ball, I think the Chiefs need to run the ball at least 25 times. How that splits up, maybe Clyde 10 to 15, Le'Veon, 5 to 10. I can see. I like to see that. I like to. For me, if you bring Le'Veon in, you need to get some usage out of him. I mean, because I understand Shady last year because he played for Andy. Andy wanted to try to give him Super Bowl. I understand it. There's really no loyalty as it relates to Le'Veon. So you got him. You know what type of player he is. Put him out there. I mean, you can say, now, I like to think they're saving him for the playoffs, but again, nothing's guaranteed in the playoffs. So I like to see those two things. I think if the Chiefs do that, look, we know at the end of the day, the biggest X factor is always going to be Travis Kelce, because even watching some college football games last night, you look at some of the plays that you're thinking to myself, okay, that they're going after this player. Why can you not double them? Why can't you not make sure that they're open right there in the middle of the field? And so that's something that Kelce finds himself, in the situation he finds himself in a lot, that he's open in the middle of the field. And you're like, damn, really? I mean, do you not know this guy leads the league in receiving and stuff like that? So those are the keys for me for Kansas City. Now, if you're the Saints, again, biggest thing is you got to get pressure on Patrick Mahomes. Now, Patrick, he's a special quarterback where whether he's running in and outside the pocket, he can make things happen because he can run and try to juke you out as best he can, or he can run and just get to where the line of scrimmage is and then fling it out. Now, I think what happened in last week's game, I don't think he makes those same mistake twice. I think if you're gonna throw the ball to Tyreek, damn it, you're just gonna overthrow him. You're not gonna just try to be cute, cute with it or something, and just fling it over and then have a chance where it gets one handed out of the air like it did last week against the Dolphins. So I don't see Patrick making those same mistakes that he did last week. So that's going to be something that the Saints are going to have to be mindful of. But also, if you're the Saints, you have got to establish and you've got to challenge the Chiefs at the line of scrimmage with your offensive line in running the ball. Because we know that the Chiefs, they do not handle the run game very well. And because you have two legit running backs that you do with Alvin Kamara and his backup, then if I'm Sean Payton, I'm going to give them a heavy dose of the run game and then hit them, with some Drew Brees in the air.
I agree, and I saw one of the Facebook viewers. He said, "Don't forget Sammy," and I don't want to forget Sammy.
Well, no, we would not forget Sammy. We just don't want to mention. We don't want them to. Yeah, we don't want them to forget about Sammy.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing about that. The Chiefs have so many weapons. I mean, you look at their offensive tree, their receiver tree. I mean, you have Tyreek Hill, of course. He's the first option. Then Travis Kelce. And then after that, I mean, there's Sammy Watkins, and we all know Sammy can go off still. He can be a 100-yard receiver. I still believe that. And then, I mean, you have Demarcus Robinson. You throw McCole Hardman in there, who's still a speed guy. I mean, Byron Pringle's back. So, I mean, you have all those different options as far as receivers go. So don't get us confused now when we don't just because we not mentioning Sammy, we still understand that he's a definite option. We're just saying that from Patrick's standpoint, you don't want to just be, and I'll call it what it is, tunnel vision. Yep. You don't want to have that tunnel vision. I mean, hand the ball off a couple of times, make the defense respect you, and that way, I mean, everything else.
Well, and here's one other thing, Le'Veon Bell. I believe one. I know. I thought he might have had 1,000-yard receiving one year with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know he did in the backfield, but he can line up at wide receiver. Utilize him in that manner. I mean, he's a 6'1", 6'2" guy. Utilize him like that because he will be bigger than a lot of those cornerbacks that he'll be facing and linebackers as well.
I agree, and he's still. I mean, he was all pro. I mean, he.
But but they don't. Chiefs don't pay us. Nor if they did it, they wouldn't pay us enough. I believe Eric Fisher is playing in today's game. I know he practiced on Friday. So to answer someone's question on Facebook, that's a good thing. Final thoughts on this game and who you got winning?
Of course, I have the Chiefs. And
Ain't no coach because remember you had them going 12-4, 13-11-5.
I did have them going 12-4.
And you did have them losing to the Saints earlier this year.
I didn't. I said that could be one of the games we look down the season towards the end of the season. And like, all right, depending on how they fare at the beginning of the season. But I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. Don't remember. I think the over and under is 51 or 57 somewhere in there. I think
it's 52.
Is it 52? Okay. Well, I think it's going to be over. I want to say the score will be 41. 41-34 somewhere in there. I think they'll be. What? 41 to 41 to what do you saw 31? No,
14 somewhere. I was like, what?
But I think they'll beat the Saints by a touchdown. The thing about it is you want to get after Drew Brees and make him flush him out of the pocket. I don't think he's going to be that mobile today. We'll see. Get your hands on him. I mean, we looked at Frank Clark. We talked about him and Chris Jones. They make sure that you're going to do bring the energy and smell that blood in the water, man. You have to.
Well, I am hoping above all things that they stay out of witness protection and they show up again today, both Chris Jones and Frank Clark. Will Tyrann Mathieu get another interception, make it 4 games in a row? I don't know. 5 games. No, 4 games.
Is it 4 games? 4
okay,
games. I thought it was 5.
No,
okay.
It's 4, Steve. 4. And so, so looking at that, that's what I want to see happen. I do have Kansas City winning. I mean, that's no surprise to anyone who's been paying attention all year. I do think it's a shootout. I think the defenses get challenged today. I see a scenario where it's 38-35 Chiefs win. Unfortunately, as usual with the Chiefs, they, when it should be a blowout, they let their foot up off the gas, and then it becomes a ball game. You're like, come on, man, seriously. And so again, I don't see Patrick Mahomes making the same mistakes that he did in last week's game. I'm looking for Patrick to have 5 touchdowns in today's game. I think he's going to go off in a manner. So because one, you have a 5 touchdown game, you knock this team off, then Aaron Rodgers, what he did yesterday, be damn, yeah, he got 40 touchdowns. But Patrick Mahomes, also knocked off the same team that you beat earlier this year. But when you face the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they got to pick 6 off you, and so little storylines and stuff like that matter. So I see a big game from Patrick today. Kelsey continues to march on to the NFL record books. Tyreek as well. So I do see a big game from those 3. I think the X factor will end up being the running game, which would be surprising. So I guess the X factor would be the play calling in today's game. But I do see the Chiefs.
May not even be the play calling though, because remember, like you said, I mean, Patrick has the last say.
Yeah, that's true. But I got the Chiefs winning 38-35. I think this is the national game of the week on CBS. There's no afternoon games on. There's no other games on CBS. So they made sure they flexed and got everything cleared out. Put them all at the 12 o'clock. We want this game. They did not allow this game to be flexed for Sunday Night Football. So
which I thought it would be.
No. I knew this game and the Tampa Bay game. CBS wasn't giving those games up. But that being said, I got the Chiefs winning 38-35.
Okay. Wow.
They barely the point spread is 3.
Field goal?
The point spread is the field goal.
Okay.
So I got money on the Chiefs scoring 28 points. I need them at least get 28 points. Everything else is irrelevant. Get 28 points, I'm happy. If they don't, then we got a problem. We will have a problem on a Zoom call this afternoon. You laughing? I'm so dead ass serious.
Man, when you look at the Chiefs' offense, though, I mean, you don't really realize how good they are until they go up against a defense like the one that they're going to go up against today. And we said it last in the Super Bowl. I mean, you looked at the way that their defense was set up. The San Francisco 49ers are like, man, how is this offense going to match up against the defense? I mean, with all those defenders that they had, the safety, man, you just didn't know. And I think today is going to be that key game to where it's like, man, this team is Super Bowl bound. And I think today is one of those games where you're going to be able to say that.
All right, see, before we get out of here, looking at some of the early afternoons games and kind of shock right now. Tampa Bay is trailing the Atlanta Falcons 24-7. Dolphins are leading the Patriots 7-6. I'm actually shocked how close the game is. It's in the middle of the third quarter. We got the Lions, Titans, 24, Tennessee, 15 for Detroit. Other scores right now.
Who's winning that Detroit game? Because my cousin called me and he said, hey.
No, Nashville. Tennessee Titans are winning 24-15.
Oh, okay.
So, but the point spread is 10.5. So
really?
That's all I'm interested. So okay. I had some with the Lions with the points. So right now I'm looking good on that. Texans Colts are leading 17-10. Bears are over the Vikings right now 20-17. Seahawks 20-3, and then the Baltimore Ravens 26, Jaguars 7. So any score surprise you besides
Tampa Bay? Tampa Bay? Yeah, most definitely Tampa Bay. Because you look at that game, it's like, all right, if this is a team who we thought we were going to see this season, which I've been saying that Tom Brady's washed, man. He's on. His borrowed time was last year.
Well, I think the most surprising thing is they're winning without Julio, and obviously the Bucs, they have a full array of weapons down there, and the fact that they're not doing.
Yeah, and I looked at that. What's the score of Detroit? What's the score of the Detroit game again?
24-15.
Okay, yeah. I know
Cowboys are winning 17-14.
I know my cousin Chico Charles Kimbrough is watching, so I know he lives in Detroit, and so I know he's watching, man. And I'm sorry about that game because they're going to lose today. Shout out to him, though.
All right, before we get out of Steve, obviously this week is Christmas. We want to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas, and we ask that you all, of course, social distance, wear your mask when it's appropriate, and stay safe. But who are you wearing for Christmas today?
I just got once a year I have to break out a Christmas blazer, so I gave Halls a break today, but I had to wear this Christmas blazer, and if you see me out in this, just say Merry Christmas.
Man, we always say Merry Christmas anyway. Of course, I'm wearing my good guy, Mr. Todd White, one of the suits from Todd's Clothier and Taylor Suits. Of course, you can find his store inside of Ward Parkway off of 85th and State Line. And see, before I forget, here, man, here. Merry Christmas to you. So I got you a little something for Christmas.
I appreciate that, man.
I was out and about yesterday, so I got you a little something for Christmas. Don't spend it all in one place. We want to thank our producer and host, Jasmine Palmer, for keeping us looking good and sounding good over the airwaves right now. And Jazz, they can't hear you, but any big plans for Christmas? She said she's just going to be eating at home, eating over mom's house. So, look, we'll be back, of course. We'll have our respective post-game stuff as we will be streaming the Zoom post-game with the Chiefs live after the immediate fall in the game. And then, of course, tomorrow, Steve and I will be back on the Red Hour tomorrow at 6:30 p.m.
Tune in. That's the best Monday night show, one of the best talk shows in Kansas City that covers the Kansas City Chiefs. Got to tune in 6:30. The Red Hour on Facebook. Myself, Darren Smith, Sean Tyler, and also DJ Q, Quentin Randall. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah, a lot of fun. And of course, we also have giveaways as well. So make sure you go to the Red Hour Facebook page and register, sign up, and for your chance to win one of the many prizes that we have each and every week. Then also make sure you tune in each day, Monday and Tuesday this week on ESPN Kansas City for Darren and Sterling at 3 o'clock p.m., 3 and 4. Then after that, of course, where we're off for the rest of the week for the holiday. Steve, I know we'll do this again tomorrow, but I want to make sure I wish you, Jasmine, and your families a very Merry Christmas, and don't eat too much. But, of course, if you get a chance, go by Gates today. Get you some of that good, and, make sure you tune in just a little over an hour and a half as we get ready for kickoff between the Kansas City Chiefs and the New Orleans Saints. So for Steve Walls, I'm Darren Smith. This has been the Chiefs Cheat Sheet right here, live from the Courtyard Marriott.
Merry Christmas, you filthy animal.